Grab Life by the Goals is the podcast for passionate badasses to get inspired, activate their potential, and crush their goals. In a nutshell, we do big shit around here. Whether you're looking to disrupt your career, start or grow a business, or simply have a more kick-ass life, you're in the right place. Come to be inspired, find your swagger, dream bigger, and take actual steps to level up your life. All with a side of real talk and raunchy humor. I'm your host, Lauren Widrick. I'm a life and business coach, and I'm right here on the roller coaster with you. Are you ready? Let's do this. What's up, my badasses? Welcome back to this week's episode of the Grab Life by the Goals podcast. I am here with one of my best friends, one of the biggest badasses I know, Colleen Odegaard. Hey girl, how you doing today?
Hi, Lauren. Thank you for asking me to be on your show.
Oh my God, it's amazing to have you here. I'm honored, and it's going to be a blast because we're talking today about how to launch a podcast that doesn't suck. And the reason Colleen is here is that she has literally been voted two years in a row the best podcast in Charlotte. And so she is the one to learn from. She's the GOAT. And I'm so excited to get all of your tips.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for having me here. Yeah, my podcast is called Wake Up to Your Life. Wake Up to Your Life. And Charlotte Magazine readers voted it best of the best 2 years in a row, as you mentioned. And I'm grateful for that. It's funny when you start a podcast, you don't know, is anyone really going to listen? So it's great when people actually do and they like it. It's very rewarding.
It is rewarding. I can see how passionate you are. And we've even created an event around your podcast called Wake Up to Your Life Live. And there are so many great things that come from starting a podcast. And Colleen knows her shit. There's a reason that she is here in particular. So I'm going to share with you some of her background and credentials. So first things first, Colleen is a certified life coach and she's a media coach. So she teaches you not to suck on film, video, audio, all the things that you're going to learn today. In addition, she's an Emmy award-winning journalist. She has 28 years of on-air experience. So she's the one to talk to about how to structure a podcast, use your voice, look right, sound right, and engage your audience. Did I miss anything, Colleen?
No, that's good. Gosh, thank you very much. I kind of sounded like a big deal, but I'm not.
You are a big deal. I was like kind of writing out these notes so I didn't forget anything. I was like, damn, this is my friend. Like I roll with bad bitches. This is amazing.
Well, likewise. No, but I think it's relevant for people to know that's what gives me the expertise and the right to sort of talk about this and teach this stuff, that I do know what I'm talking about. As you mentioned, I spent 28 years in front of a camera doing live television, and you learn a few things about how to deliver content, how to, as you mentioned, look good, sound good, be concise with your message, how to drive home a point, and all of that, which is what we do in a podcast.
Absolutely. And I hired Colleen, was it a year and a half ago, to be my media coach as I was launching the podcast and doing more reels on Instagram. And the things you've taught me are still with me. So for instance, yesterday I was recording a reel and I was remembering your tip, don't bury the lead, hook them within the first 3 seconds. And so my hook on this reel yesterday, I literally had you on my shoulder. I was like, guess what, guys? I suck at goals. Which is kind of salacious because I have a company called Grab Life by the Goals. And people are like, what? She sucks at goals? And it got really good engagement and viewership because I kind of hooked them with this misdirection hook at the beginning. But you were in my ear at that moment. So this shit works.
That was perfect. I would say that's a perfect lead. Hold on one second.
Okay, we're back. Colleen's dog was barking. This is the true life of podcasting. This shit happens. No big deal.
It does. Happens all the time. Sorry about that. Yes, she doesn't respect the fact that we're recording.
Exactly. And what I was about to say, it's so funny that Callie barked right on cue because I was about to say, Colleen has this great blend of polish and structure, and she knows what she's doing, but she also keeps it real and it's very warm. And I love that about your approach because, like you said, you structure the episodes well, you hook people in, you use your voice properly, but it's real stuff. It's real life that you talk about.
Well, that's one of the things that's so great about podcasting. And I think what resonates with an audience, depending on certainly what it is that your podcast is about, but people want authenticity. They want you to be real. They want that. So yes. And, getting back to what you said a moment ago about the reel that you posted when you didn't bury the lead, good job. That is something that new podcasters make that mistake all the time. They bury the lead. You want to come out straight out the gate on a reel, on your podcast with the good stuff, what people are going to get out of it. So That's very important. And it allows you to be real. Like to me, you saying that, you've got a company called Grab Life by the Goals. It's the name of your podcast. And then you come online and say, I suck at goals. It's perfect, right? That's real. That's Lauren being real. And that's something that will draw people to you.
Thank you, Colleen. It's all because I hired you as my media coach. So people, she does this and it really does drive engagement, traffic, sales. So I'm going to do a tip right now that I learned from you. We're going to show everybody real time. A lot of people start podcasts with this question. So Colleen, I'm so glad you're here. Tell us about yourself, which is opening you up to a 10-minute diatribe about where you went to college, when you moved here, and your last 8 jobs, right? So we're not going to do that because you taught me not to do that.
Don't do that. And people do it all the time. Have you noticed it?
Oh,
people will ask that question on a podcast, on an interview, whether Facebook Live or somewhere on YouTube, and they'll say, just tell us about yourself. Now you have put control of the conversation into your guest's hands.
Yep.
And they could go on for the next 15 minutes. I could say, well, I was born in New Jersey in 1970, and then I moved to California, and then, what, I did this, and nobody gives a shit about any of that stuff. So there's a reason you have asked this person to come onto your show. So talk about that thing. And as the host, as an interviewer, you need to set the stage, take control of that, and tee up your guest to shine and to give their good information.
So good. I wish I had this advice about a year ago. This wasn't a podcast, but it was a guest. I had a guest expert come and speak to one of my groups. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, tell everybody about, you're so amazing. I've known you for years. Tell everybody about you. He went on for 30 minutes and I had no way to break in and get him to stop. And it was interesting enough. I love this person, but okay. So with podcasts, we need to grip the listener. So that was a long lead up to show you how it's done. Here's a better first question for a guest. Colleen, why did you start your podcast?
I started my podcast because I knew I had something to say. So as you mentioned, I worked in television news. I was a journalist for 28 years, and I was constantly telling other people's stories. And I was happy to do it. It was my honor and privilege to be able to do that. But in that, I had story, and I had things that I wanted to say and things that I thought and wanted to share and wanted to teach. So really, that's what it was about. And also because I think people looked at my life and thought it seemed so glamorous, that here I was on television and I had this nice looking family and seemed to have all the things to, that I probably didn't struggle with confidence, or that I just somehow had this charmed life. But on the inside, I was struggling so much and had to learn all of these things, to get myself out of the pit, so to speak, and learn things to learn how to really love myself once and for all, how to show that to other people, how to be more of myself. And I realized so many people struggle with that. Even people you look up to on social media, someone you see on Instagram, and she seems so bold and out there, and you think she never struggles with confidence. No, she's probably going through something too. So I wanted to come on and say, look, I get it, you guys, you're not alone. And here's some stuff that's worked for me. Maybe it can work for you too. So that's why I wanted to start the show.
And that's a powerful reason, because what I heard you say is you had something to say. So if you're listening to this episode and hearing Colleen and saying, well, damn, I have something to say, I want Colleen to inspire you that you can do this, and people want to hear what you have to say. And then secondly, it sounded to me like an act of service, because why put yourself out there that way? I have to believe it was to help other women feel seen and heard and not alone.
100%. That is why. Yes, it is. For me, the podcast really is an act of service. Truly, first and foremost, it was not about, I thought, how people say, if I can just help one person, it'll all be worth it. Well, I didn't know if anyone would listen to the show, and I didn't have any agenda with it when I started it. I just knew that I was supposed to. I had that feeling inside of me, gosh, I've been thinking about this for years and years and years. Now's the time. I've got to do it. And I know that someone listening right now may have that too. They have that thing inside of them. Oh, I've been thinking about it. It's time to just do it. And that's kind of what happened. So I didn't have an agenda. I wasn't trying to sell my services. I do. I mean, I let people know what I do for a living and that I'm a coach and I can help them, but I don't, hard sell on my podcast at all. That was never the intention. It was just to be an act of service. And that's the thing about podcasting. You might want to start because you want to shed light on a social issue, or you feel passionate about a group of marginalized people and you want to bring their stories to light, and it's just simply a passion project, that's it, and you want to educate people, great. That's enough of a reason to start a podcast.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's the ultimate reason to start a podcast.
Agree. Yeah.
You and I have joked about this. Sometimes people's podcasts are a little bit thirsty. And I'm probably guilty of that at times too. Like people start a podcast because they're like, this is another channel for which I can sell my shit. And it is. It totally is. I'll tell this story. I launched my podcast. Episode 1 was called How to Make Time Your Bitch. Episode 2 is called The Formula to Achieve Impossible Goals. And an old colleague, an old friend of mine listened to episode number 2 and signed on as a high ticket private client like that week. And so I was like, oh, hot damn, this thing is a sales tool, right? But that was never the intention. And I think that's why. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the truth is I love that story. I get most of my life coaching clients through the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
They find my show, they listen to the podcast, and then they decide that they want me to be their coach. And which is a great byproduct. But really, if people aren't signing up for my coaching services, I'd still do the podcast.
That's why it works, in my opinion, Colleen. You would do this anyway, right? You would do it for the service and for the self gratification it brings you.
Yes, I would. And I think that people who enter into this world of podcasting, as you have, find that it's very rewarding. If you do a show or an episode that you're particularly proud of, and then you can look back at your body of work and go, wow, that's really cool. And remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint, that it is the entire body of work. I think people burn out because they start a podcast and they go, gosh, it's so much work. And like the only people who listened were my best friend and my mom and my neighbor. And that's it. Forget this. I'm not doing it anymore. And that's why I like to help people do it better so that it doesn't suck, so that more people will listen, so that strangers will listen and then go, wow, I really like this person. Oh my gosh, I love the show. I can't wait until it comes out every week.
So I think this is the bottom line. Start a podcast because you want to, because it fulfills you, and that it's some act of service in some way. Even if that act of service is sheer entertainment or something deeper, it doesn't matter. But like, make sure it's for you, make sure it's for the listener, and any sort of like sales or traffic or whatever is the byproduct, not the point. I think that's how you have a great show.
Oh, thank you. I believe that. I think that is in part what can lead to great success with a podcast. Lauren, people probably ask you this all the time. How do you make money doing a podcast? Like, oh, you get sponsors. People think they're going to get sponsors and be rich. And maybe you can sign up for these podcast conferences where the so-called experts talk about this. I have found it's like going out to dinner money. Sponsorships for your podcast, unless you're in the big leagues, right? Yeah. You're the Dax Shepherds and 10% Happier, and you're Joe Rogan, and they're making some money from their sponsors, right? But for people like you and I, for people listening right now, probably not. It might be going out to dinner money. So sure. I wouldn't advise the podcast is like, I'm going to be a professional podcaster and this is how I'm going to make a living. Probably not. However, you can make money through your podcast. You can absolutely sell on your podcast, sell your products or services, or it can lead to other things, whether it's speaking engagements or a book deal. Cool stuff will happen if you do a good podcast. That's what I can tell you. Cool stuff will happen.
That's the damn truth.
Yeah.
Cool stuff will happen, even if you just connect with amazing people who appreciate you and you can appreciate them back.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that something?
That's something major. Yeah, exactly. So this whole portion of today's episode is to basically tell you, if you have this in your heart, if you feel called, go for it. There's not a huge barrier to entry. It's not that hard. It's a little overwhelming with the equipment. We have a producer, Kristen Stegall, who's Nava Studio. She produces this amazing podcast. She'll hook you up with a checklist to start with the technical stuff. But if you're like, should I do it? Can I do it? Will people listen? Will I like it? If it's in your heart, I think we'd say, go for it. What do you have to lose?
Yeah, I say yes. If it's in your heart, go for it. Do it. If people aren't listening at first, don't get discouraged. That's where I can help you. I can listen to your show and tell you why people aren't listening, why they're tuning out after 10 minutes or so. We can restructure it and make it so that people will listen to the whole thing all the way through. And the truth is, you don't know if people will listen until you take a shot and try it.
Right. Don't you agree that some of your initial episodes might suck a little bit as you're figuring it out?
I certainly have episodes that I go, ooh, that wasn't so good. I do. Not every episode is a home run, and it doesn't have to be. Again, remember what I said about the body of work? It's not one episode isn't going to make or break your podcast.
Right.
It is the consistency of showing up every single week, sticking, being on point, on brand with whatever it is that you've promised your listeners. Like, I do this podcast to teach people how to reach their goals, or whatever it is. I do this podcast about disc golf, and I'm going to teach you how to better your game. Cool. Then make it about that every time. You show up consistently week after week. Some episodes are going to be stinkers. Some episodes are going to be awesome. And again, it's about the feeling that people get when they go, God, that show's so good. Overall, it's great. That's what you want people to say about your show.
Well, you segued perfectly, like a professional, into my next question, which is, how do you pick a premise? What if you're multi-passionate? What if you want to talk about waking up to your life and disc golf and cryptocurrency and marriage and sex? Like, this is me, by the way. What if you have a squirrel brain and you want to talk about all the things? How do you stay on brand?
Okay, so this is hard for a lot of people like you, Lauren, who has squirrel brain. And I like to talk about a lot of things too. I would say this: when you initially start your podcast, keep it on brand. When you have rabid fans who love you, now you can take some more chances and you can branch out a little bit more easily, because people are willing. You've earned that goodwill with your audience now.
That's fair.
If you've got thousands of listeners and you say, I know I teach you about business and reaching your goals, but today I want to talk about sex, you can get away with that. Mm-hmm. Initially, I advise against it. Truly. And people do not like hearing this. People don't like that. But I want to talk about everything. What do you teach people when they're selling, Lauren? If you're trying to sell to everybody, you're serving nobody. You have to pick your perfect listener, the way you pick your perfect dream client. Who is going to listen to your show? Well, my show's for everybody. It's for everybody in the world. No, it's not. And it shouldn't be. And if you're saying that, then your show needs some work already. So I think that if you are multi-passionate and you want to talk about food and fitness and sex and goals and cryptocurrency and trading Smurfs on eBay and Beanie Babies or whatever, okay, I think no one's going to listen to your show.
That's totally fair. I give that advice to my brand new side hustlers. Like, I know you can coach, for instance, executives and moms and millennials. I know you can, but for the first year, pick one and master that lane.
Yes. I mean, I know you see that with your side hustlers. They come, they're like, well, I want to be a coach for everybody. Well, how are you going to market that? How are you going to sell that? So with the podcast, I think pick what your thing is. And so how do you pick what that is? I would say, think about why you're doing the show. Why do you want to do it? Who your listener is, who the show is for. Let's say it's for
let's say busy moms who are burned out, right?
Yes. And then stick with topics that serve busy moms who are burned out.
Yes. And then my next question is, because I struggle with this, there are only so many topics for busy moms. Like, let's say I make 18 episodes with 18 different things, home organizing for busy moms, mindset for busy moms, fitness for busy moms. Like, there aren't 100 things for busy moms, are there? Like, did you ever worry about this? I worry about this sometimes too. Like, am I going to run out of content?
No,
really?
You will never run out of content. You certainly will never run out of content.
My ass probably won't run out of content, but people worry about this. I do worry
about this very much. And this was something. So I used to host a TV talk show in Charlotte where I live. And people would say that to me. How do you have topics? I was interviewing 7 people a day, 7 different segments, live segments a day, 5 shows a week. That's a lot of content,
Yeah.
You just get creative. Now, granted, that was any content could be anything that would serve people of our city. On your podcast, it's a little different, but that's where you get creative. You dig deep. You can say things again. You can interview a different expert. You don't have to worry so much about reinventing the wheel. Oh, but take an Instagram post that you did for busy moms that did really well, and then turn that into a podcast.
Yeah.
You get. And I can help people with that. Like, I can help you figure out, like, I don't know what else to talk about, right? I would say for busy moms, it's, busy moms, you're putting yourself last. How's your your self-care game. Do you care for yourself? Do you love yourself? You love your kids? Then you talk to a shrink about how to do that. There's always a way you might have to massage it a little bit and kind of, poke around in there and figure out, what do these people care about? What do my listeners care about? Serve them. Either be entertaining, like you said, you can just be funny, but really be funny, get on there and be funny, or teach something, serve your listener in some way.
I think you and I will never run out of content is because we are actually living the thing we're talking about, right? Like, you're going through experiences. Your life has changed dramatically. Mine has too over the last year. And we have these things to talk about. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are, I don't know, trying to create a podcast on trading Smurfs on eBay and you never traded a Smurf on eBay, you're going to run out of things to talk about.
Correct.
But if you're engrossed in that world, every day you're going to have new stories like, holy shit, did you know that you could do this? Or did you, I met somebody who's killing the game even more than me. And you'll never run out of things if you're actually walking the walk.
Mm-hmm. Talk about what you know. That's what I would say. Talk about what you know. I have a woman who wants to start a show for people going through grief. She lost her husband unexpectedly. And she said, but I also want to talk about food. And I also want to talk about this and recipes. And then I want to turn it into a show. And I said, okay, cool. Awesome. But let's start with doing podcasts for people who are grieving. Start there. And in part, you share your own story. Maybe you talk to somebody else. You talk about ways to face the day. You talk about a particularly hard time and what you did. And then you can teach other people how they can render that in their own lives, right? You can even use yourself as an example, but then what renders universal from your story? Why are you telling this story about yourself? If the hope is that what you've learned can render universal to anyone who's listening, like, you might not have the same struggle I do. It might not be this exact thing, but at the heart of it, the feelings are the same, or the difficulties are the same. Here's what I did to get through it. Okay, cool. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I think new podcasters should focus in and sort of master a few key message pillars.
Mm-hmm.
I did this with Kristen, my podcast producer, and she's going to kill me because I don't remember them off the top of my head. They were like sales, swagger, big sexy goals, pure entertainment. And I'm glad I just remember that, because I need to go back to doing just pure entertainment, like just funny, just take a break from everything going on in the world. I'm going to talk about weird shit, because I do have an episode called Let's Talk About Weird Shit. And it's one of the best performing ones over all the sales and the training and the, bullet point structure that, like, Let's Talk About Weird Shit was for the top 3.
It's such a great title. It's so fitting coming from you. Let's talk about weird shit. And I love that. But see, but I would also argue you can pull that off. You're funny and you know how to do that, and you know how to talk about weird shit. And that's why you can do it. Now, by all means, take a chance, everybody. If you want to talk about weird shit, go for it. But, and some of your episodes might not be great when you start, and that's totally fine. Do stuff that's entertaining.
Yeah, no, that I think this was great advice. Like, pick a lane. It's the one you're living. It's the one you're most passionate about. You'll never run out of content. And then as your podcast grows and your audience grows, you can kind of like branch out and test and try new things.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fair.
I like pointing out a problem, offering a solution. If you're in like the coaching space, kind of a podcast, mm-hmm. If you're doing something about, I worked with some guys who are retired police officers, and they wanted to talk about on their show, talk about mental health and cops. Great. And great stuff, right? And they host it together. They're very funny. They play off of each other very well. They're very cool. But then all the episodes ended up sounding, then they'd interview somebody, and it was just kind of the same thing over and over again. Like, you need to if you're interviewing somebody, there has to be a reason you're interviewing this person. And we often think like their story is just so powerful. But if it's not someone who's famous already, mm-hmm. It better really be a freaking powerful story, and you better get right to the point and hone it in so that a new listener will keep listening. That's what you have to do. Like, that's an example of where you don't just say, tell us your story. Well, yes, I was struggling with my mental health because life on the force was really hard. Like, that's every officer's story. So, their job then became, okay, now we'll go in there, set it up, tell listeners what happened, and then ask your person, talk about how you felt when that was going on.
Yeah. Okay. Once again, like a professional, you've segued into my next question for you, which is the structure of a good podcast episode. Mm-hmm. So this is where I think you have the juiciest tips. Like I've heard you just like rattle them off, like, don't do this, do this, don't do this, don't do this. But like when it comes to creating an episode, so let's say you've got the episode title, you've got the guest, or you're doing it solo, and you sit down to record. Mm-hmm. What do you need to keep in mind to keep it tight?
So I do say keep it tight, first off, and this is for new podcasters or anyone who's podcasting, but your numbers are flat. You're not growing your listenership. And you notice when you dive into the data that people tune out after just a few minutes. They don't listen to the whole thing. First thing, keep your episode short. How short do you mean, Colleen? Like 30 minutes or less. Unless the interview is so good, then let it go 45 minutes.
Yep.
Or an hour, but it's got to be good stuff. Like, oh my God, I've never heard anything like this before. I don't want that person to stop talking. Then you can let it keep going. But in general, keep your episodes shorter, not longer. Keep them shorter. One thing that will help you to keep it short is if you are interviewing a person. When Lauren said at the top of the show, how, you don't say like, hey, tell us your story. Like, don't start with that. You as the host, as the interviewer, you tell the person's story. Like what Lauren did when she was introducing me. She went through the credentials. She didn't ask me to rattle off my credentials and why you should listen to me. She did it. That will save you time, because if you leave that up to the guest, they'll take 12 minutes to say it. But if I say, Lauren Widrick is an entrepreneurship coach and a side hustle coach. She has helped her clients make millions of dollars by learning how to sell online in a way that feels good and authentic to them. I just came up with that, but
that's so good. I'm stealing it. That was good.
But now I've gotten your attention as a listener. Like, this is why you should listen to Lauren Widrick without you having to go through all of it. So as the host, as an interviewer, if you set up here's why you're listening to this person, and you tee people up, this requires you as a host to have done some homework before you do the episode. Not just wing it. Like, I'm just going to talk to this person because I think this person's cool. That's not a good enough reason to have the person on your show. Have the person on your show because I want the person to come and teach people how to do podcasts that don't suck. Okay. So we're going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about all the other shit I got going on. I'm going to talk about how to make a good podcast, right? That drives you, Lauren, as the interviewer, the proper questions that you should be asking me. And if I don't say something that you want me to say, as the host, it's your job to then go in and like ask another question or rephrase a question until you get your person to say the thing. So keeping your episode tight, knowing who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, why they're here. If they're here to help busy moms organize their kitchen pantry, then keep going back to that. Don't let the interviewee go talk about the closet and the garage and the playroom and meditation classes and yoga and how that gives you balance. Now you've lost me. Come back to how to organize the kitchen pantry. Make sense?
It does. It sounds like an art form to learn.
So it is an art form to learn for sure. And you get better at it the more you do it. I'm sure that you've noticed it over the past, however long you've been doing your show, you're probably a better interviewer now than you were in the beginning. Right?
Thanks to you. Yeah.
So it takes practice. So it takes practice doing this, but there definitely are skills that you can learn how to get people where you need them to go in a show. But again, if your job is the host and you've invited somebody here, if you can just remember this, why you're talking to this person and what you want your listeners to get from them, that's going to help you ask questions that are on point. So if you forget everything else I said, just remember that. It'll help you to ask questions that are on point for your listener. And if your interviewee subject goes off on tangent, you just bring them back over here. You bring
absolutely.
Them back. Yeah.
And Colleen and I are pros. I'm lumping myself with you. I'm not a pro, but before this episode, we asked ourselves, what do we want listeners to get out of this time with Colleen on the show? And we said, if people are on the fence about starting a podcast, but they're scared or overwhelmed, we want them to feel empowered and like they can do it. So that's why I'm asking Colleen these very particular questions. Like, why did you start? What is it like for you? How do you make it good? Like, I want people to actually leave this episode and be like, hot damn, I think I can do this.
Yeah. Well, because it's hard, as you know, the second you sit down in front of a microphone, like people think, oh, I'm so funny, or me and my best friend are hilarious. And we're just so funny. We're just going to start a show, or me and my husband, we've got this great rapport and we're just going to do this. It's going to be so funny. And then it's not funny because you sit down at the microphone. Now you've got a live mic, and not live mic, but you've got a mic recording you. Pressure's on. Now you've got to quote perform. It's not as easy necessarily as people think. However, I don't say that to dissuade anybody. I just want them to go in with a little bit of a plan. That's all.
Yes. Yeah. Nobody wants to hear like, hey guys, it's Friday and I just had some thoughts I want to share with you. And like, don't do that episode. Friday thoughts or like whatever. Don't do that.
Friday thoughts. It's so dodo. When people do that shit, I get so irritated. Like, just say the thing. Say the thing. Or when, just come out and say the thing. So keeping it tight, knowing who you're talking to, why they're there, what you want your listener to get out of that person being on your show.
Yeah.
That helps. Not interrupting people when they talk. This is a very important thing for those of you who are new at this. There's a tendency when somebody is speaking and you're the interviewer to want to say, yeah, totally. You're so right. Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, me too. And you'll notice, now that I've said that, you'll notice this. Listen to people who have newer shows. You'll hear that a lot. It's hard as a listener. So as an interviewer or host, don't do that. Let your person who you're talking to speak. When that person is done, then you can chime in.
It's the worst when someone's going, yeah. And I've made that mistake too. But to me, it like wrecks the episode.
It really does. It's hard for the listener to stay with you. So just learn to ask an open-ended question and then shut your mouth and let your guest talk. If your guest is going on ad nauseum, like 20 minutes about something that's not making sense, look for your opening, look for when the person pauses, jump in there and redirect. That's how you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other dodo mistakes that you see?
Yes. So I also think in line with, so remembering that my first rule, if you're a new podcaster, is keep your episodes shorter. You'll hear a lot of gushing on a podcast. So somebody will have their friend on, and I'm all for gushing. I think gushing is great because if, I get it. However, that can take 7 minutes. There can be 7 minutes of gushing. What I mean by this is, so if I have Lauren on my podcast, so the truth is Lauren is one of my best friends. I love Lauren Widrick. And it could be easy for me to start the show and go, oh my God, you're just so amazing, Lauren. So you guys, Lauren is one of my best friends. And oh my God, remember when we were at brunch that one day and we were talking about this thing and it was so funny. And oh my God, you're just the most amazing person. Then it becomes this like gushathon that goes on and on and on. And if I'm a listener and I don't know either one of those people, I don't know Lauren, I don't know Colleen, you've lost me. Now I'm not interested.
Mm-hmm.
So keep your gushing. I'm not saying don't flatter your guest. Flatter your guest by all means, if that is relevant, or if this person you're talking to somebody who has really, you've learned from them and you want to thank them, do it. But if just remember to keep it tight and get to the meat, which gets to don't bury the lead, which comes back to don't bury the lead, which is what I teach people when they're making social media content. Because if there's a very popular podcaster and I cannot listen to her shows because there's so much gushing that happens. It takes literally, I've timed it. It'll go on for 13 minutes before they've even asked the question. So I can't listen. I'm out.
I think you and I both do a good job of this. I tried to use all your tips today. So if you go back and listen to the intro of this, I think I used 1 or 2 sentences calling you my best friend and a bad bitch, and then gave your credentials and try to dig right into like, why did you start your podcast? And for the record, we decided to name this podcast something like, we'll see how the title comes out, but it's How to Launch a Podcast That Doesn't Suck. I think that's kind of a gripping title that Colleen helped me craft for this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think about episode titles?
So I don't do this exactly right for myself, but there is a way to do this. I think titles need to be catchy. It's helpful if they're catchy and really tell what the episode is about. So your titles are fantastic. Like the title that you came up with for this episode, I think that's great. How to start a podcast that doesn't suck. That's great. That gets people's attention. It lets them know, oh, I'm going to learn how to start a podcast and have it not be so terrible. It lets people know. So as much as you can name your titles, something that tells a listener what the show is going to be about, the better. Now, do as I say, not as I do, because I have titles of my podcast that don't make sense to anybody but me. I do.
Disagree. I actually disagree. Your titles are very potent. They're short. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're not these like, how to start a podcast that doesn't suck dash with my best friend and media expert dash Colleen Odegaard dash. Like, I see these long titles and I'm like, is anybody even reading the whole title, let alone listening to the episode? Like, I think yours are very clear. Clarity over cleverness.
I like clarity. So I think naming your title, letting people know what they're going to get out of that episode is helpful.
Agreed.
Another thing, one more thing, people ask me a lot about, Lauren, their voice. They ask about how to sound professional. They say, oh, you sound good, Colleen, and I hate my voice. And I say, well, your voice is what your voice is. So don't play around. Don't like try to do a professional voice because that sounds weird and won't be authentic. So your voice is what your voice is. You got to just own it. And if you don't like the sound of your voice, I'm going to tell you to get over that and do the podcast anyway. And the more you do it and listen to the sound of your recorded voice, you'll start to like it, or at least you'll get used to it. So
I'd say get used to it.
I say get used to it too. Just get used to it. There's no tricks there. I will say this though, when you're going to say something, say it and say it all the way through. You'll hear a lot of people when they're nervous, they come out strong and they start to trail off at the end of a sentence. And then they get real quiet. Don't do that. Doesn't make you sound confident. So say what you're going to say, stick to it. Big finish. If you're going to end the sentence, just end it. Like don't back off of what you're saying. Just end the sentence with your full voice.
Yeah.
A lot of people trail off and it doesn't give the listener a sound of, they're not buying what you're selling. They don't believe in you. They don't think you're confident.
That's good, like vocal coaching, because you can trail off without confidence, or a lot of women will end on a question. Do an example of that when somebody ends their sentence on a question.
Yeah. So we're talking about social media and how to show up on social media and not suck. And we're talking about how to do a podcast. And when you do a podcast and you don't want it to be bad, that's what we're talking about today. That thing, like, don't do that. A lot of, I hate, you hear it a lot. You hear that a lot. You're right. Particularly from women. So end the sentence, come down, but those are things that's spit and polish that we can put on a show, but really remembering, why you're talking to a person and asking questions that are on point is going to help, and not to back off vocally, to stick with it and to, say what you're going to say. Don't trail off.
Oh yeah. One other thing that you've taught me is to inflect. So whenever I'm doing a reel or a podcast, I feel like I'm being very extra. Like, I feel like my voice is a little bit more bouncy and but if I don't do that, it sounds dead. I sound like a dead fish online. So I think you have a very interesting voice because it has the right amount of inflection. So I'm always trying to copy how you do it. I definitely don't get to your level, but I found an old video of myself from a couple years ago, and I was talking about like how much to pay yourself as a business owner. And I was like, hey guys, so today we're here to talk about how much you should pay yourself as a business owner. And there's really and I watched this video. I was like, what the fuck? That was so boring. Like literally a sleeping pill. Awful.
A sleeping pill. Who needs Ambien when you can watch Lauren's old videos?
Literally. See, you just did it. See, I love that we're talking about it and then we're doing it, because you just said, who needs Ambien? You just brought the energy to our episode by using your voice the way you just did.
So using energy, I believe in that. Even if you're doing an episode of a podcast episode by yourself, and even like you put yours on YouTube, you can see us now, if depending on where people are listening or watching right now, but I don't do that. So I just have audio only. So you still want to keep that interesting, right? So now you're going to tell someone something juicy, right? You can even do a little bit of this and come on in, you guys. Oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened. The same way you would with your best friend, right? Keep it interesting vocally. And and I'm not telling you to be an actress. Just remember this, make sense. So if you're telling me a happy story, if you're telling me something about how, you just landed a client and you had the best month of your life and you made so much money, you would tell the story and you would smile when you're telling the story, wouldn't you? Because you'd be so freaking excited and you'd hear it in my voice, right? If I'm telling you, Lauren, I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, I just landed this deal. It's $20,000. I can't believe they signed this contract. I'm so excited. You hear it in my voice.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Oh,
so
yes.
because it's what makes sense. It's what I would naturally do. So do that when you're doing your podcast. Have your voice match the content. If you're talking about something somber, right? Something serious, something somber, take it down a notch, but keep the energy. So energy does not equal talking louder or talking faster. It might, but not necessarily. There's an intensity to what you're delivering in your vocals. So keep that up too. So even if it's a somber thing, it's something very difficult to talk about. There's still a way to talk about it to give it intensity and energy without sounding like, hi guys, I'm so excited you joined in for my podcast today. So that's to play around with it.
Play around with it. I have a sex voice. I heard it on my own podcast one time. I was like, did I really just that voice is reserved for Sean, daddy? But I said it on the podcast. I was like, oh my God, you guys. Seriously. I was horny on the podcast. And
I actually don't mind that though. I think depending on what you're talking about, I think that could be great. If you were talking about a pair of designer shoes that you've been salivating over and you said, I have been looking at these shoes, you guys. Oh my God, I could just die. And I finally bought them. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with you doing that.
Yeah.
Because it makes sense.
Agree.
Yeah. So if you just remember things like that, yeah, makes sense. Let my voice make sense with what I'm talking about. Do that.
Okay. So another thing that Colleen and I are very intent upon teaching you is to be authentic and real. So we're going to do it here in this podcast episode too, because we're making it sound like a bucket of unicorns and roses to have a podcast. And it's not. Sometimes it sucks. So we're going to talk about so Colleen, are there ever times where you're like, fuck this podcast? I can't do this today.
Yes.
Or really?
Oh God, yes. And I love my podcast, but I totally have days where I'm like, fuck this podcast. I am not doing this anymore. And I'm going to be an Uber driver. End of story. Oh God, totally. Because I'm just not feeling it. I'm not in the mood. I'm crabby. I'm tired. I'm whatever. I can't think of anything. When you ask me, how do you come up with content? I'm like, oh, that's stupid. Or I sit down to record and I think, oh, this is a great topic. And I start talking. I'm like, I am just dribbling, saying nonsense right now. This sucks. I can't put this out into the world. Forget it. So yes, there are times when I hate it. There are times when I've made a bad decision in who I interviewed. I was like, man, that was kind of a stinker. And I take responsibility for that. I mean, if a guest wasn't good, I take responsibility for it. It's me who wasn't good because I didn't bring the goodness out of them. And I'm not to blame my guests. That's my job as the host to bring that out in a person. And sometimes I don't do it well. There have been times when I'm the night before it comes out and I'm still recording and I'm like, fuck, and I'm irritated. And so, yes. So, because here's what's hard about podcasting, as you know, that I told you to be consistent, whatever you say you're going to do. If you're going to do 2 shows a week, 1 show a week, 1 show every 2 weeks, 1 show every month, pick it and stick with it.
Yep.
Stick with that. And I'm going to tell you that whatever you say you're going to do, let's back off of that in the beginning. Because it's really hard. The content beast has a voracious appetite. And when you're feeding it once a week, I mean, a lot of people who would say they're going to do 2 or 3 podcasts a week. And I say, you're probably not. No. And I'm not a dream killer. I'm go for it. You know that. But the reality is they're not accepting how it can be difficult, or you might be in a creative slump or something. So it can totally be hard. But yes, that part is difficult. And I've even I've made mistakes. I uploaded the wrong file once that went out into the world. And it was so embarrassing, you guys. Oh my God. This is a true story.
Really?
Oh my God. Yes. I took what I thought was the edited version of the show and I put it into the host website. So, people go, how does your podcast end up on on Apple and Spotify and Google Play because you get a website that you pay a subscription to and you upload your show there and then it puts it out to all the places. Well, when I put my episode on that website and went out to all places and I went to hear it the next morning, I hear me going, okay, test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, check, check, check. Here we go with the intro. That's what went out into the world. And I thought I wanted to die. I'm like, oh, I couldn't even bring myself to listen to it because I didn't know what I said. I didn't know if I was talking crazy or because there's a chance that I could have been doing something like that because sometimes I do. It was so embarrassing. So oopsie. What about you? What's been hard for you or what don't you love about the podcast sometimes?
Same thing. Last year, about 6 months ago, I took like a 6-week break because I was burned out.
Yeah.
And it can feel sometimes like a chore. And I hate to describe it that way because this is probably one of the top 1 or 2 favorite things I have in my business. But like anything, like your kids or marriage or your favorite dinner, like sometimes it's like, oh my God, it's Thursday. I have to record, sometimes you want to just take a break. At least I do. Mm-hmm. But then when I get on the line, like with you or, something happened last week. So last week I was avoiding my podcast. I didn't have a good topic. I had a bullshit topic. And I just set it to the side and I was like, I am just going to I have this idea about how to make your business feel like home. And I just talked about it for like 19 minutes. And I hit record. I was like, this one's a stinker. This one is not my best one. But then just a few days later, one of my current clients was like, that episode really, really helped me. That episode really, changed my perspective on everything. And I'm like, thank the Lord, because to me, that was like, oh God, was that even worth publishing? Mm-hmm. So those moments of like, this isn't my best work, or I don't feel like doing this, they come back around as rewards when you just show up.
God. Yes. I love that you said that. I love that you did that. It's fantastic. I've had a very similar experience where I put out episodes. I'm like, that was so lame ass dodo, sucky. Why did I do that? And then I'll get DMs on Instagram from people saying that they loved it. I'm like, oh, you did. So I'm glad I just showed up. So make the commitment to show up and do it. Even if it's a stinker, even if it's not your best work, it can still serve somebody.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so. And there have been times, I go nuts on my podcast talking about dicks and curse words. And, I'm like, is my husband's boss going to stumble on this episode?
Let's talk about dicks right now.
Can we okay,
Go
I hope you're
it.
watching the YouTube channel because I'm going to show Colleen. I keep these in my desk drawer, these pink sparkly dicks. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm waving them on the screen right now.
She is. Why do you keep those in your desk? Where did you get those from?
Why wouldn't I keep pink sparkly dicks in my desk?
Good point.
That's
Good
my
point.
Question.
Yes.
That's my question. No, a client gave these to me and they're like my little spirit animals. So whenever I need to make a call or let's say a podcast episode funnier, I just pull out the pink sparkly dick cutout and just, swim it across the screen.
When you need big dick energy, I guess you just. Yes. Okay. Very good.
So maybe the tip we're trying to install here is like, have fun. This doesn't have to be a Pulitzer Prize winning anything. Like just have some fun.
That's right. Really at the end of the day, yes, have some fun, take some chances, but there are some things that I can help people with as far as like, okay, now let's like zero in on it and come up with some great titles and content for your, let's get your first 10 episodes figured out, locked in. Here's how you're going to formulate it. Boom. And that makes it more fun. Because what makes it more fun is when you get a DM like you did, Lauren, or somebody saying, gosh, that episode about how to make your business feel like home really helped me. Then you're like, this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm doing the show. Yeah.
Yes. So what if you could have 3 hours with Colleen where you knocked out the premise of the show, the ideal listener, your next 10 or 12 episode titles, and then how to structure the first 2 or 3 so that they kick ass and people actually listen to them? What if they could spend 3 hours with you to do that?
Yeah, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Yes, that was my lead in for you. So Colleen is hosting a workshop that literally can condense like months of trial, error, wondering, fucking around into like a morning. So tell everybody about your upcoming workshop.
Yeah, it's on July 15th at Tabris Innovation Center, which is in Charlotte's South End. Thank you, Lauren, for getting that space for me. I appreciate that so much. It'll be from 9 to noon that morning. And it really is going to be just what Lauren said. This is for anybody who wants to start a podcast. I want you to already know what the podcast is about in general, right? Have that idea. Like, I want to start a travel podcast, a healthy cooking podcast. Awesome. Okay, whatever it's about. if you want to start a podcast, or if you have one and you're just not thrilled with the number of downloads you're getting like 30 downloads an episode, right? And you want to get 1,000 downloads an episode. Okay, you need this workshop. You're going to get some clarity about, as Lauren mentioned, we're going to nail down the titles of your first 12 episodes or the next 12 episodes, know how to structure some of them. You'll talk to me about who your guest is. I'll talk to you about how questions that you can answer, so that you will leave that morning with a concrete plan. There will be no guessing. Oh, wait, now what was I supposed to do? What am I supposed to talk about? You will know what's up. You can sign up for the class now.
Yes, go to Colleen's Instagram bio. You can sign up for the link there, I'm assuming, right? And I might just be a fly on the wall. I might come and just listen. Because I think she's probably going to give some vocal coaching too. So if you have like some nervousness about how you sound, I believe you could role play a little bit and kind of try out your voice. And she can give you some real-time coaching on like, oh, add some inflection there, or maybe get to the point faster there. And that's the gold that is, Colleen, that's what you've done for me, is give me that training, the technical training, but it's given me the confidence to put myself out there. And that's why Colleen's a difference maker. She can go from like, my podcast is kind of, I'm not that proud of it, to like, no, I love my podcast and I sound good and it helps people. Or like, I hate going on social media. Like, no, I went on a reel yesterday and like kicked ass at it. It is the difference between doing nothing and doing something and feeling good about what you're doing. That's what Colleen does for us.
Thank you. I really love helping people with this, because I know that when people want to start a podcast or they want to do reels on Instagram, but they're embarrassed or nervous or shy, or they don't know what to say, they feel so good once they finally do it. And they're like, oh my God, look what I did. Thank you. I'm like, no, you did it. I didn't do it. You did it. Like, and I love that. I love when that happens for people. Like, it truly, like, I get goosebumps. It makes me so happy, because everybody can, this isn't, you don't have to go to journalism school and be a professional broadcaster to be able to do this well. You don't.
No.
I'll hook you up. I'll teach you.
Yeah. A few hot minutes with Colleen Odegaard, who is the GOAT at this.
Thank you.
So where can people find you if they want to take your upcoming workshop on July 15th, or just connect with you about media coaching in general?
Sure. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram. It's at Colleen_Odegaard. Good luck to you spelling my name. At Colleen, COLLEEN _Odegaard, ODEGAARD. You can go to my website, ColleenOdegaard.com, and book a call with me, or send me an email. It's all there on my website, but any of those ways works. And I'll put the link in my Instagram bio to sign up for this workshop, how to start a podcast that doesn't suck.
Wonderful. It'll be in the show notes too. And Colleen, my weakest point of podcasting is landing the plane. So I'm going to say something like, you've got 2 professional life coaches and 2 podcasters here saying you can do it. It's time. If you want to do this, we're here for you. There's nothing holding you back.
That's 100% the truth. You land the plane just fine, Lauren. You got this. Lauren's amazing, by the way. She's been my coach too, in addition to my friend, but I love you.
I love you too, girl. Maybe we can gush at the end. I love you.
Yeah, I love you too. You're so amazing.
You're just the best. Colleen and I like to hug and touch tatas on TV. We're just like in love with each other. All right, guys, that's it. That's the episode. As always, grab life by the goals, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Grab Life by the Goals podcast. If you loved this episode, I would be thrilled if you subscribed wherever you listen to your podcast, so that you can get notified when an episode drops and we can rendezvous like this every single week. If you're feeling frisky, maybe slap a 5-star review on this bitch, and maybe even some comments about what inspired you from this podcast episode. This is simply so more people can find us and join our squad of badassery. I love me some Instagram, so come find me. My handle is at Lauren Widrick, and if you screenshot and share this episode with your peeps, I'll come shower you with all the virtual hugs and kisses. Until next time, grab life by the goals, my friend.